Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we sift through a whole pile of information to pull out the really key insights just for you. And today we're doing something a bit different, actually. Our sources, well, they aren't your typical news reports. We've been looking at this collection of what the source itself calls doodled and roasted news. So think editorial cartoons, really witty commentary, satirical takes on everything from global politics and market swings to tech booms, history, even like lighthearted cultural stuff. Our mission here is to look past the humor, find the surprising facts, the crucial insights hidden in these snapshots of the world, which can seem absurd, but are surprisingly revealing.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about looking at it this way, you see, is the unique perspective you get. Filtering news through satire, well, it often reveals these underlying public feelings or, connections you wouldn't spot on, let's say, more formal reporting. It lets us find some meaning in the apparent chaos, and I think you're going to have some real aha moments today as we link things that seem, well, totally separate at first glance.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it then. Starting with the global stage. I mean, even when it's served up with a joke, diplomacy and power, they're always serious business. First stop, Zelensky's visit to Washington. Our source, with its usual wit, calls it high-stakes peace talks, but then immediately says that means more photo ops, less peace, and suggests the real fight is about who sits closer to the flag during press photos. It's funny, but wow, it's pointed, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And, that cartoon, it's doing more than just being funny. By focusing on something seemingly trivial like flag placement, it's subtly criticizing how optics, how things look, can just completely overshadow actual progress in international relations.
Right.
The insight isn't just, oh, people are cynical. It's that the performance of diplomacy has become so dominant that it's prime material for satire now.
Yeah.
It really makes you question how effective diplomacy can be when the appearances seem to matter more than the real results.
Yeah, that's a really strong point. Do you think that points to a bigger shift in how international relations work now, or is it just the satire kind of magnifying something that's always been there?
I think it feels more like magnification, yeah. A cartoon, being visual, it lets you make that quick, sharp jab at what feels true. That sometimes the show is the main event. And that makes people wonder, what's the actual impact in the real world?
Okay, so from that diplomatic theater, the source took us somewhere much more visceral, the protests in Iran. The description is vivid, almost heartbreaking. It stresses the extreme conditions. Imagine being so fed up that you'd rather protest in 110-degree heat than stay home without electricity.
Wow, yeah.
It even mentioned protesters with signs saying, "Electricity, please," right next to officials in reserved gold-plated chairs. I mean, that image. It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly powerful. The cartoon's specific details,
Right.
they're not just about general unhappiness. It's starkly highlighting the raw complaint, this perceived luxury of the elite right next to, well, basic human suffering. It's not just some abstract governance issue. It's a deep visual statement on resource inequality being the spark for massive unrest. The satire just drives that home way more effectively than a dry report could.
And what does that say about, the human spirit when basic needs like electricity push people to protest like that, risking everything in that heat?
Well, it shows there's a breaking point, right? A limit to what people can endure when essentials like power, a decent living environment, are just denied again and again, while the powerful seem to live large. It just breeds this deep resentment. No amount of spin can contain that. It's almost like a primal cry for dignity.
Speaking of powerful images and contrasts,
Yeah.
the source pulled out some amazing AP photos of the day. One was fireworks at Versailles, total grandeur, celebration. The other, a Mexican protester throwing tacos at riot police.
Yeah.
And the source's summary just nailed the contrast. Instagram aesthetic plus chaos energy.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Those two images side by side, they really capture the huge range of human experience and
Yeah.
how people express themselves publicly. You've got the big planned celebrations right next to raw grassroots anger and protest. It just underlines how diverse public feeling is around the world and how the media catches both the celebration and the confrontation. Makes you think both are equally real, just different ends of the spectrum.
That idea of finding meaning in how things are placed side by side in that juxtaposition, that really feels like the heart of this deep dive, right? It makes you wonder what other hidden truths these contrasting images hold about, the state of the world, the beauty and the chaos, often literally right next door to each other.
Precisely. It really challenges us to look past just one headline and see the bigger picture, the interconnected, often paradoxical sort of tapestry of what's happening globally.
Okay, so moving from human drama and diplomacy, public feeling is clearly a huge force, and that force, as our source shows, also shapes the seemingly colder world of markets and technology. So the source noted markets are reacting, stocks up, oil down. The commentary was basically investors are celebrating like they found a coupon at Costco. Funny, right?
Chuckle slightly.
Yeah. But then comes the kicker. Until Jackson Hole, then, panic resumes.
Right. Okay, so those market moves, yeah, they suggest a generally positive feeling, maybe some confidence, stable energy supply perhaps. But that Jackson Hole bit, that's absolutely crucial for anyone paying attention. Jackson Hole isn't just some random meeting. It's where central bankers, especially the U.S. Fed chair, often give really important speeches that signal future policy like interest rate moves.
Ah, okay.
So that panic isn't just random market jitters. It's the market literally holding its breath, waiting for signals that could completely change investment plans overnight.
So it's less about things being stable now and more about everyone being on tenterhooks, waiting to hear what a few powerful people might say. That feels vulnerable.
Exactly. It shows just how much investor feeling is driven by what they expect to happen and by signals from, a handful of key people, not just the current economic facts.
Well, that's definitely true for crypto. Our source reported crypto is slumping again. Bitcoin near $115 K, XRP under $3. And the commentary. Brutal. Hilarious, but brutal. Remember when people said digital coins would replace cash? Yeah, now they're replacing your therapy bills. Ouch.
Ouch is right. What's really insightful there, though, is how the satire gets at the psychological hit from these wild market swings. It's not just about the usual boom and bust cycles you see in new markets, replacing your therapy bills.
Yeah.
That points to a really deep loss of trust, and the emotional cost for investors who maybe bought into all the hype early on. It shows how this promise of a revolutionary new finance system can, for a lot of people, just end up causing personal stress and regret. It's a very human point about money and well-being.
Yeah, you don't often get that level of honesty from like a standard financial report, do you? It really captures the human side of these digital ups and downs.
Absolutely. The humor is like a doorway to a pretty sobering truth about what it feels like to invest in really speculative stuff.
Okay, from slumping crypto to soaring energy. Our source had this dual news item, UK solar power hitting record highs, which, as they joked, is great news unless you're a vampire.
Knuckles, right.
And then the boom in AI data centers, but with experts warning it's a bubble. The source quipped, finally, a bubble that won't pop in my bathtub.
This connection is really, really interesting. So on one side, you've got sustainable energy like solar doing great, which is fantastic news. But then you think about the massive energy demands of things like AI data centers, which are just exploding. That bubble warning, it's not just about maybe the money being overvalued. It also hints at the physical limits of this digital growth. Even with more renewables, can we actually power the exponential growth of AI sustainably? That joke about the bathtub bubble, it cleverly points to the very real physical resource challenges behind all this digital progress.
Ah. So the humor is kind of highlighting this critical sustainability question. Our tech gets more advanced, needs more power, potentially faster than our green energy solutions can keep up. That's a big challenge to think about.
Exactly. It forces us to really consider the environmental cost of our digital future and whether our energy systems can actually handle it.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to societal changes and cultural quirks, because it's not all, geopolitics and finance. Our source noted a really important historical moment. Historic Women's Right Day, reminding us the U.S. ratified the 19th Amendment, giving women the vote over a century later.
A huge milestone.
But then the sharp observation was they're still waiting for politicians to actually listen. And it references modern voters being glued to TikTok.
Wow. Yeah, that really reflects on the whole journey of social progress, doesn't it? Historical wins like the 19th Amendment, they're fundamental, of course. But this commentary points to the challenges now with civic engagement. It suggests this perceived gap between having the right to vote historically and the modern reality where people still debate if politicians are truly responsive, and where new media, like TikTok, hugely shapes how voters pay attention and get involved. It kind of has the right to participate really translated into actual political influence today.
That's a really interesting point. Does that shift in how people get information, from newspapers to super fast TikToks? Does that change how citizenship works and how politicians have to connect?
Well, it definitely makes things more complex. You have information overload, maybe shorter attention spans
Yeah.
that can kind of dilute the impact of traditional ways of making your voice heard. It makes the challenge of actually being heard feel more difficult, perhaps, even when you have the vote.
Okay, and from historical progress to, well, cultural spectacles, we learned that India crowned its Miss Universe representative in Jaipur. Apparently, there were 48 contestants,
Wow, that's a lot.
which led the source to joke. Which is more contestants than India's cricket team has excuses after losing.
Laughs. Okay, that's brilliant. Events like, yes, these global things like beauty pageants, they offer this really interesting window into national identity, what a country aspires to. And the humor about the cricket team,
Yeah.
it's so specific, right? It's self-deprecating, but also kind of proud in a way. It's a cultural inside joke. It just shows how a nation can laugh at itself, but also celebrate its wins on the world stage. It highlights that mix of ambition and wit in their cultural expression.
Yeah, that joke definitely lands if you know anything about the passion around cricket there.
It absolutely does. And that's the power of satire. It can be incredibly specific, but still understood within that cultural context.
Now, shifting tone again for a more somber moment, the source reported a Brooklyn nightclub shooting in Crown Heights. It simply stated, nothing funny here, which is important.
Right. Acknowledging the seriousness.
But then it added this really poignant observation about New Yorkers. New Yorkers will still line up for brunch right next door tomorrow morning.
Yeah. That, unfortunately, highlights the very real issue of violence in cities. That observation about resilience, it's not just about people getting back to their routine, is it? It speaks to something deeper, a cultural thing maybe. Like reasserting normalcy becomes a quiet way of pushing back, of defiance. It's how communities cope, maybe. Process tragedy by reaffirming life, showing strength even after a shock.
That's a really powerful way to think about it, not just moving on, but actively, deliberately reaffirming life. It says a lot about community spirit in cities.
It really does. It's kind of a testament to the human ability to keep going even when things are incredibly difficult.
Okay, and just when you think you've absorbed all that global weight, the source brilliantly lightens the mood right at the end. National Couples Day, their advice for singles. It's basically National Ignore Your Ex Day, recommending you celebrate responsibly, preferably with ice cream, I think. I think a lot of us can relate to that one.
Falcons. I think pretty much everyone can. It's just this small, charming detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it reflects that whole diverse tapestry of daily life the source captures. These little cultural holidays, even when they're framed with humor, they're kind of an important balance to the heavier news. They remind us that among all the big global issues, everyday life is also full of these very human, relatable moments, from huge celebrations down to just, enjoying some ice cream. It brings the picture full circle.
And that, I think, brings us to the end of this really unique deep dive. We've gone through high-stakes politics, volatile markets, booming tech, deep historical moments, and even just the funny quirks of daily life, all seen through the lens of these incredibly sharp, doodled and roasted sources. It's been, well, fascinating way to get beyond just the headlines and try to grasp the feelings underneath the human side of the news.
Absolutely. It really hammers home the idea that you can find deep insights in unexpected places, even in sources that seem lighthearted or satirical on the surface.
Yeah.
By connecting the dots, looking at different viewpoints, we pull out knowledge that genuinely informs us and broadens how we see this complicated, often contradictory world we're in.
So as you go about your day, maybe think about this. What does it actually say about right now, about our current moment? That sometimes the sharpest insights, the most relatable truths can come from a quick cartoon and a witty caption. How do these quick takes on reality with their mix of humor and real observation, how do they shape our own deeper understanding? Or maybe even just our quick judgments about the world? Definitely something to chew on until our next deep dive.